Have you ever felt like your place in the world was being stolen from you? Not by a stranger, not by an enemy, but by someone inside your own family. I've been married for 9 years. I thought I could handle the subtle remarks, the polite little digs, the invisible games. But when my mother-in-law decided she wanted my son to call her mama, something inside me broke. This isn't just a story about marriage or family drama. This is about what happens when the most sacred word in your life, mama, is suddenly at risk of belonging to someone else. I was 20 years old when I first met Daniel. Back then, I didn't know what real life looked like. I thought love was fire and passion, something that swept you off your feet and made the rest of the world blur into nothing. Daniel wasn't like that. He wasn't a storm. He was a calm sea. And maybe that's why I fell for him. He gave me peace at a time when I didn't even know I needed it. We dated through the messiness of our 20s, college classes, part-time jobs, the endless hustle of trying to figure out who we were. He was steady. He was loyal. He was the kind of man who fixed your car before you even realized something was wrong with it. By the time I turned 21, I was sure. This was it. This was the man I wanted to build my life with. When we got married, people told me I was too young. You're rushing, they said. 9 years is a long time. You'll see. But I didn't care. Love makes you reckless like that. What I wasn't prepared for was Cornelia. Cornelia, my mother-in-law, came into my life like a character out of a movie. Perfectly styled hair, elegant clothes, a voice that carried both warmth and authority. She was the kind of woman who lit up a room, and not just because she was charismatic. She was calculated. Every word, every gesture, was measured and deliberate. At first, I admired her. She had this way of commanding attention without raising her voice. People respected her. People adored her. And I wanted to be liked too. I wanted her approval. But from the very beginning, I felt something else, something subtle, something sharp hidden underneath her smile. It started with small things. The first Christmas after Daniel and I married, she handed me a gift. It was wrapped in gold paper with a perfectly tied bow. Inside, I found a box of white chocolate truffles. I smiled politely. Thank you, I said, but inside I froze, because I hate white chocolate. And Daniel loves it. I had mentioned that once, just once, during a casual conversation. And I knew in that instant, this wasn't a mistake. She remembered. She always remembered. She leaned forward with that polished smile of hers and said, I thought you'd enjoy these. They're sweet, just like you. Anyone else in the room would have thought it was a kind gesture. But to me, it was a message, a reminder. She knows her son better than I do. She always will. It sounds petty, doesn't it? Chocolate, such a small thing. But marriage isn't destroyed by hurricanes. It's eroded by tiny cracks, day after day, year after year. And Cornelia was the master of tiny cracks. Every gathering was the same. Thanksgiving dinners, birthdays, 4th of July barbecues. She would compliment me just enough to appear polite, but there was always an edge. A glance, a phrase, something only I would notice. It was like being pinched under the table while everyone else laughed at the joke. I didn't tell Daniel at first. How could I? To him, she was just being friendly. And maybe I wanted to believe that too. Maybe I thought if I ignored it, it would stop. But it didn't stop. It never stopped. The thing about people like Cornelia is that they're never careless. Every move, every word is deliberate. If she wanted to make me feel small, she did it in ways that left no fingerprints, no witnesses. Just me, standing there, smiling through clenched teeth while my insides twisted into knots. Take Thanksgiving, for example. Our first big holiday as a married couple. Daniel and I had spent the entire week preparing a dish to bring, a green bean casserole with homemade crispy onions. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Something we had made together. When we arrived, Cornelia greeted us at the door like the hostess of the year, arms outstretched, smile sparkling. Oh, you brought a dish, she said. How sweet. She carried it into the kitchen, set it on the counter, and then without even looking at me she added, Daniel always loved my sweet potato pie best. It's his favorite holiday dish. It was a simple statement, harmless, on the surface. But the way she said it, the timing, the precision, it cut me down like a knife. As if to remind me, you'll never feed him the way I do. You'll never be me. Throughout the night, it was the same. Compliments disguised as tiny jabs. Oh, you wore that color again. It's very brave. Daniel likes his turkey with extra gravy. Did you know that? He always has. You two should really let me babysit someday. You'll need someone reliable when the time comes, always delivered with a smile, always in a tone light enough that anyone else in the room would think I was crazy if I took offense. And the worst part, Daniel never noticed. He would sit beside me, laughing with his cousins, sipping wine, completely oblivious. That's the cruelest trick of all when you're the only one who sees the daggers. It makes you doubt yourself, makes you wonder if maybe you are paranoid. Maybe you're just overly sensitive. But I wasn't. I knew exactly what she was doing. Cornelia had a way of making herself the center of every room. At birthdays, she gave the loudest toasts. At barbecues, she told the longest stories. At Christmas, she was the first to hand out gifts, the one everyone thanked. And me? I was always just the wife, just the girl who married Daniel. One night, early in our marriage, we went to her house for dinner. She served roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a salad dressed in homemade vinaigrette. It was a perfect meal, the kind that made everyone go quiet for a moment, lost in the taste. Halfway through dinner, she looked at Daniel and said, "You know, honey, I used to make this for you every Sunday. Remember?" Daniel smiled, warm and nostalgic. "Yeah, I remember." And then, without even glancing at me, she added, "I guess some traditions just can't be replaced." Everyone at the table chuckled, thinking it was just motherly banter. But I felt it like a punch to the gut, because that was her message, loud and clear. You'll never be enough. You'll never replace me. For a while, I tried to fight back the only way I knew how: silence. I told myself to pick my battles. I told myself that marriage meant compromise, that Cornelia was just eccentric, maybe harmless. But over time, those tiny cracks became part of me. I stopped wearing certain clothes because I knew she'd comment. I stopped cooking certain meals because I knew she'd remind Daniel how she used to make them. I became smaller, quieter, and the more I shrank, the more space she took up. Looking back now, I see how carefully it all unfolded. Cornelia never stormed in and took control. She didn't need to. She just nudged, slowly, quietly, until one day, I realized I had built a life where she was always standing just behind me, her shadow overlapping mine. And Daniel? He loved us both. He didn't see it as a competition. To him, it was simple: his wife and his mother, two women who mattered most. But to me, it was never that simple, because Cornelia didn't want to share. She wanted to win. Pregnancy changes everything. Your body, your mind, even the way people look at you. Suddenly, you're fragile in everyone's eyes, a vessel carrying something more important than yourself. For Daniel, it was joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. When the test came back positive, he lifted me off the ground and spun me in circles like we were in some old movie. His laugh echoed in my ears for hours afterward. For the first time since our wedding, I felt like the center of his universe. For me, it was complicated. I was excited, yes, but I was also scared, raw, and desperately in need of comfort. My body wasn't my own anymore. I woke up nauseous, cried at random commercials, felt exhausted by noon. I needed safety, stability. I needed someone to take care of me, and that's when Cornelia moved in closer. It started one Sunday afternoon. Daniel had gone to pick up groceries, leaving me alone in their living room with her. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon candles and something else, sharp, acrid. I turned, and there she was, Cornelia, sitting by the window, a cigarette balanced between her fingers, the smoke curling lazily toward the ceiling. I froze. "Would you mind putting that out?" I asked, my voice softer than I wanted it to be. "The smell makes me sick." Cornelia didn't move, didn't even look at me at first. She just exhaled slowly, watching the smoke drift away like she was hypnotized by it. Then she turned, smiled, and said, "You know, dear, women smoked all the time during pregnancy back in my day. Didn't hurt a thing." My stomach tightened. I wanted to argue, to tell her that times had changed, that science had changed, that her casual dismissal terrified me. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I sat there, swallowing the nausea, my hands protectively folded over the small curve of my belly. Cornelia took another drag. "You're overthinking it. You young girls worry too much these days. Stress is worse for the baby than a little smoke, you know." And with that, she leaned back, perfectly composed, as if she had won something. That moment burned itself into my memory. It wasn't just the cigarette, it was what it represented. A test. A line drawn in invisible ink, and I failed, because I didn't stand up. I didn't scream. I didn't grab the cigarette and crush it out. I just sat there, silent, letting her pollute the air around me and my child. When Daniel came home, arms full of grocery bags, the cigarette was already gone. The window was cracked open. Cornelia greeted him with her usual warmth, as if nothing had happened. And I said nothing, not because I wanted to protect her, because I wanted to protect him. The pregnancy went on like that. Small moments, each one chipping away at me. When I craved pickles and ice cream at midnight, Cornelia would laugh and say, "Daniel used to sneak into my bed for cookies at night." Some habits never change. When I struggled with back pain, she'd casually mention, "I carried Daniel for 9 months with no complaints." Never slowed me down. And when I decorated the nursery soft yellow walls, a crib Daniel built with his own hands, Cornelia walked in, took one look, and said, Interesting choice. I always pictured blue." It was never outright cruelty. Never enough to call out. Just steady, measured erosion. Like waves eating away at a cliffside. The breaking point came in the 7th month. Daniel was working late, and Cornelia offered to drive me to a doctor's appointment. I didn't want to go with her, but I was too tired to argue. In the car, she lit another cigarette, despite my protests. I rolled the window down, desperate for air. Finally, I snapped. "Why do you do that? Why can't you just stop just for an hour? Just for me?" Cornelia's eyes flicked toward me in the rearview mirror. Calm, cold. "Because, dear, I don't take orders from children." The words hung in the air like smoke. Thick, heavy, unforgettable. And in that moment, I realized the truth. Cornelia wasn't careless. She wasn't oblivious. She was testing me. Over and over. Pushing, prodding, waiting to see how far I'd bend before I broke. And the worst part, she was winning. When Daniel finally came home that night, I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to unload the truth, beg him to choose me, to see what I was going through. But when I looked at his face, tired, happy, glowing with anticipation of fatherhood, I swallowed the words, because if I told him, if I forced him to see, it would break him in half. He would have to choose, and I wasn't ready for the answer. That's how Cornelia lived in our marriage, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as a presence. In every room, every decision, every breath I took. And as my belly grew, so did the distance between Daniel and me. He thought we were building a family together, but I knew the truth. We weren't 3, we were 4. Me, Daniel, the baby, and Cornelia. Always Cornelia. Childbirth was supposed to be the most empowering day of my life. That's what the books said. That's what the nurses on the prenatal floor whispered in soothing tones. But when the day finally came, it didn't feel empowering. It felt like drowning. The contractions hit me at a sharp, sudden, like someone had reached inside and squeezed with a fist made of iron. Daniel fumbled for his phone, panic written all over his face. He dropped the car keys twice before we finally stumbled into the cold night air. The world outside smelled like rain. Inside the car, I was shaking, gripping the seatbelt as if it could anchor me to this earth. By the time we reached the hospital, I was drenched in sweat. The fluorescent lights stabbed my eyes, the sterile scent of disinfectant choking me. Nurses moved quickly, voices blending into a blur. "Breathe, push, hold still. We've got you." And then of course Cornelia arrived. She swept into the delivery room as though she belonged there, clutching her oversized leather bag like she was carrying sacred scriptures. Her perfume, sharp, floral, suffocating, invaded the room. "Oh, my poor baby," she cooed. And she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Daniel. Daniel kissed my forehead, whispered, "She just wants to be here for us." But her eyes had already found mine. Cold, assessing, a queen entering her throne room. I wanted to scream at her to leave. I wanted my mother, not his. But exhaustion pinned me down. Pain had stolen my voice. So she stayed, ours blurred. The clock hands crawled. I pushed until my body felt split in two. Nurses shouted encouragement. Daniel's hand crushed mine. And Cornelia stood in the corner, watching like an audience member at a private play. And then finally he came, our son, tiny, red, screaming like the world had already betrayed him. They placed him on my chest. And for one single, fleeting second, I felt whole. His warmth against my skin, his fists curling, his heartbeat against mine. I was his mother, his only mother. And then Cornelia stepped forward, Let me hold him, she said. Not asked, said. The nurse hesitated, glanced at me. My eyes screamed no, but my lips stayed shut, cracked and dry. Too weak to fight, Daniel took the baby gently, turned, and placed him into Cornelia's waiting arms, and just like that, my son's first embrace outside of me belonged to her. Cornelia cradled him with practiced ease, rocking him, humming a lullaby I'd never heard before. Her face softened, her eyes glistened. My sweet boy, she whispered. Mama's here. The words sliced me open more violently than the contractions ever could. Mama, not Grandma, not Mako, Mama. I wanted to rip him from her arms, to scream until the walls collapsed. But I was too broken, too drained, too drugged on pain and fear. So I lay there, silent tears streaking down my cheeks, as my child's first lullaby came not from me, but from her. The hours after birth are supposed to be sacred. Skin-to-skin bonding, breastfeeding, whispered words of love. But for me, it was a battlefield. Cornelia stationed herself by the bassinet, scooping him up before I could. She adjusted his swaddle with a smug precision, as if reminding everyone she had done this before. When I tried to nurse, she hovered so close I could smell the coffee on her breath. Angle him higher, she instructed. You're doing it wrong. No wonder he's fussy. Daniel smiled at her advice, grateful. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Every moment that should have been mine was stolen, repackaged, and paraded as hers. The breaking point came the next morning. I woke groggy, aching, the world spinning. Daniel was asleep in the recliner. My son lay in the bassinet, and Cornelia was already holding him. Her voice was low, coaxing. You know, little one, you're my boy, my flesh, my blood. You'll always know Mama Cornelia loves you best. I sat up, heart pounding. Give him to me, I whispered. Cornelia didn't move. She kissed his forehead, closed her eyes and swayed. Shh, don't wake him. He's perfect right now. Something inside me snapped. I said give him to me. My voice was louder this time, sharp enough to wake Daniel. He blinked at us confused. Cornelia finally turned, her smile tight, her eyes blazing. Victory. She placed him back in the bassinet with deliberate slowness, as if granting me permission. Then she leaned close, her lips brushing my ear. You can play house all you want, dear. But don't forget Daniel was mine first. And now, so is he. That whisper has haunted me ever since, because in that sterile hospital room, under the bright lights and the smell of antiseptic, I realized something horrifying. Cornelia didn't just want to be a grandmother. She wanted to be a mother again. And she had chosen my child as her second chance. The first weeks at home blurred together in a haze of milk stains, dirty diapers, and endless crying. Time stopped meaning anything. Morning looked like midnight. Midnight looked like morning. Daniel returned to work after 2 weeks. And suddenly it was just me and the baby. Alone, or at least, that's how it should have been. But Cornelia was always there, sometimes literally showing up at the door unannounced, holding a casserole dish as though food could disguise intrusion. Other times, she was there in spirit, her voice echoing in Daniel's reassurances. Mom says he should be sleeping longer by now. Mom says you're spoiling him if you hold him too much. It didn't matter how many times I explained that newborns need to be held, need to be soothed, that there was no such thing as spoiling a baby. Daniel always nodded politely, and then did whatever Cornelia had told him. One night, around 3 a.m. I sat in the rocking chair, my son wailing in my arms. My body was sore, my eyes raw from crying. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My head felt like it was splitting in two. I whispered, please baby please, just sleep. And then the phone buzzed. A text, from Cornelia. Is he up again? Try letting him cry it out. He'll learn faster that way. Trust me, dear, I know. I stared at the screen, rage flooding my veins. How did she know? Was she watching me somehow? Why did she always insert herself at the exact moment I felt weakest? I typed back 3 words, he needs me, then I deleted them. Because I knew she'd win anyway. Days became weeks. Cornelia began referring to herself as Mama Cornelia with everyone who visited. My friends, Daniel's co-workers, even the mailman once, when she happened to be holding the baby by the front steps. Every time I corrected her, he calls me Mama. She's Grandma. Cornelia smiled sweetly, as though humoring a toddler's tantrum. And every time Daniel stayed silent, looking anywhere but at me, the walls of the house began to close in. The nursery that once glowed with yellow paint now felt like a stage set. Every lullaby performed under Cornelia's invisible spotlight, and my baby looked up at me with innocent eyes, completely unaware that his first battlefield wasn't out in the world. It was right here, in his own home. The breaking point came during his first checkup at the pediatrician. I sat nervously in the waiting room, rocking him, whispering nonsense songs to keep him calm. Cornelia had insisted on coming, of course. Daniel, caught between us, shrugged. She just wants to help. When the nurse finally called us in, Cornelia walked ahead, carrying the diaper bag like it was hers. She answered half the doctor's questions before I could open my mouth. "How's his feeding?" the doctor asked. "Oh, he's eating well," Cornelia said smoothly. Though she's still figuring out the right latch, my cheeks burned. My voice cracked when I corrected her. "He's feeding fine. He gained weight. Look at the chart." The doctor nodded, reassuring me. But Cornelia's smirk said everything. "You don't get to own this story." That night, I collapsed on the couch, baby finally asleep, body aching from the inside out. Daniel sat beside me, scrolling his phone. "I can't do this," I whispered. He looked up. "Do what?" "This?" My voice broke. "Her, always her. Every decision, every word. It's like she's the mother and I'm just the babysitter." Daniel sighed, put his phone down, rubbed my shoulder. "She's just excited. This is her first grandchild. You're overthinking it." Overthinking. That word clanged in my skull like a warning bell, because that's what Cornelia wanted. For me to look crazy, for me to doubt myself, for Daniel to see me not as a partner, but as unstable, emotional, paranoid. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't just invading my motherhood, she was rewriting me. That night, when Daniel finally fell asleep, I crept into the nursery. The moonlight spilled across the crib, painting my son's face in silver. I whispered, so softly only he could hear, "You're mine. No matter what she says, no matter what she does, you are mine." But deep down, I knew the truth. Cornelia wasn't giving up. She was just getting started. By the time our son was 6 months old, the world had shifted in ways I didn't recognize. Daniel still kissed me goodnight, still smiled when I handed him our son. But there was a gap now, invisible, quiet, but impossible to ignore. A gap shaped like Cornelia, because every decision we made wasn't really ours. It was hers. Formula versus breastfeeding? She had an opinion. Swaddle versus sleep sack? She had an opinion. Solid food? She had an opinion. And every time Daniel repeated her words as if they were gospel, something inside me cracked just a little more. The first time the cracks showed in public was at Cornelia's house. She'd invited the entire family for Sunday dinner, a celebration, she said. For what? Nobody knew. Maybe just for herself. I dreaded it from the moment Daniel told me. But I didn't want to be the bitter wife who never showed up. So I dressed carefully, packed the diaper bag twice, and told myself I could survive a few hours. Cornelia's house was already buzzing when we arrived. Cousins, aunts, uncles' faces blurred together, laughter echoing through the high-ceilinged living room. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs hung in the air, and then she appeared, sweeping down the hallway like royalty. "Here's my baby." Cornelia sang Dottie first. I thought she meant Daniel, but no. She went straight to the stroller, straight to my son, lifting him into her arms as if I didn't exist. "My sweet boy," she cooed. "Mama, Cornelia's here." The words dropped into the room like a stone into water. Nobody flinched. Nobody corrected her. They all just smiled, nodding, as if it were perfectly normal. And in that moment, I realized the horror. This wasn't just something she said to me, behind closed doors. She was building her story publicly, out loud. She was branding herself as Mama. When I tried to correct her, "He calls me Mama." "She's Grandma," Cornelia laughed, a light tinkling sound, and patted my arm. "Oh, dear, don't be so sensitive. We're all family here. He knows who his real mother is." But the way she said it, the way her eyes lingered on me, made it clear. To her, real meant hers. Dinner was torture. Every bite tasted like sawdust. Every time my son fussed, Cornelia was the first to scoop him up, bouncing him on her hip, singing in that syrupy voice. "He always calms down for me," she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "It's instinct. Babies know who loves them best." The family chuckled, murmured their approval. Daniel smiled proudly, missing the dagger hidden in the words. I sat there, hands clenched in my lap, heart pounding so hard I thought my chest might split. Halfway through the meal, Cornelia raised her glass. To my grandson, she said, her voice carrying over the chatter. He's the light of my life. I've waited my whole life for this. Everyone cheered. Glasses clinked, and then softly, almost like a prayer, she added, and to my son, for giving me another baby to love. The table roared with laughter. My face burned, because in that moment, I wasn't the mother, I was just the vessel, the stand-in, the outsider at her table. When dinner finally ended, I gathered our things quickly, desperate to leave. But Cornelia blocked the doorway, still holding my son. Don't worry, dear, she whispered as she kissed his head. He knows who his real mama is. Her smile was soft, sweet, perfectly innocent to anyone watching, but her eyes told the truth. This wasn't a slip of the tongue, this was a claim. That night, back at home, Daniel asked why I was so quiet. Because she called herself his mama again, I said flatly. Daniel sighed. She doesn't mean anything by it. It's just a nickname. You know how she is. But he didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at the floor, and I realized maybe he didn't fully believe me. Maybe he thought I was overreacting. Maybe Cornelia was winning. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the baby monitor glowing softly beside me. My son breathed evenly in the crib, innocent, untouched by the war around him, and I made myself a promise. If Cornelia wanted a battle, I would stop pretending it wasn't happening. She wanted to be mama? She would have to tear that title from me with her bare hands. The Sunday dinner at Cornelia's house lingered in my mind for weeks, like smoke I couldn't wash out of my clothes. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I avoided family gatherings, things would calm down. If I kept the walls of my home strong, she couldn't invade. But I was wrong, because Cornelia didn't wait for invitations. She created them. It started small. Daniel would get a call at work. Sweetheart, you're working so late. Why don't I stop by and give her a break with the baby? And before I could protest, the doorbell would ring. Cornelia smiling, casserole in hand, swooping my son into her arms before I could blink. You need rest, dear, she'd say sweetly, guiding me to the couch as if I were the guest in my own house. Why don't you take a nap while Mama Cornelia takes care of him? Mama Cornelia, always those words. The worst came when Daniel suggested she babysit overnight. You need a break, he said gently, brushing hair from my face. We haven't slept in months, Mom offered. Just one night. I froze. One night? Without me? He's 6 months old, Daniel. He's not ready. You're not ready, he corrected softly. But maybe you need to let go a little. Let go. The phrase made me nauseous, because letting go wasn't what Cornelia wanted. She wanted to take. The night it happened, I packed his bag myself, hands trembling with every onesie folded. Cornelia arrived with the triumphant glow of a queen reclaiming her heir. Oh, look at him, she cooed, buckling him into her car seat. Mama's boy, ready for his first sleepover. I nearly lunged, nearly tore the straps apart, but Daniel's hand on my shoulder held me back. Trust her, he whispered. Trust her. But trust wasn't the word. For what Cornelia demanded, obedience was. That night was the longest of my life. The house was too quiet, the crib too empty. Every sound made me jump, every silence felt like a scream. I called Daniel's phone twice, begged him to ask his mother to send me updates. Nothing came. By sunrise, I was half mad with worry. I drove to Cornelia's house before Daniel even woke, and what I found made my blood run cold. There she was, in her living room, rocking him in her arms, her eyes closed, humming softly. But it wasn't the sight of her holding him that broke me. It was the sight of the crib in the corner, fully made, blankets folded, a stuffed bear tucked inside. She had prepared for him, as if he lived there. As if he was hers. That morning, I snapped. Give him to me, I demanded, stepping into her living room. Cornelia's eyes opened slowly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Shh, don't wake him, dear. He slept through the night for me. Such an angel. For you. I spat. My voice shook, but it was louder than it had ever been. He's not yours, Cornelia. He's mine. The words silenced the room. Even Daniel, who had followed me in, froze in the doorway. Cornelia stood slowly, cradling my son against her chest. Her smile was razor thin. You're tired, she said softly, almost kindly. You're overwhelmed. You should be thanking me. I'm saving you. Saving me? My laugh was sharp, bitter. You're trying to erase me. Daniel finally stepped forward, his voice weak. Mom, maybe we should, but Cornelia cut him off, her voice rising for the first time. I raised you, didn't I? I know what's best for him. Better than she ever will. The words hit like a gunshot. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend us. And in that silence, I felt something shift inside me. A clarity I hadn't had before. I walked forward, held out my arms. My voice was steady, steel hidden under velvet. Give me my son. Cornelia hesitated. For a heartbeat, I saw something in her eyes. A flicker of fear, maybe, or rage at being challenged. Then she placed him in my arms, slow, deliberate. Like a queen surrendering a crown. She didn't believe she should lose. I held him close, breathing in his warmth, my heart racing. Then I turned to Daniel. Never again, I whispered. She doesn't take him overnight. She doesn't decide for us. If you can't protect us from her, then I will. That was the moment the line was drawn. Cornelia knew it, Daniel knew it, and I knew it too. The war wasn't over. It was only beginning. Thanksgiving should have been about family. About laughter, warmth, the smell of turkey and pumpkin pie filling the air. But that year, it felt like walking into an ambush. Cornelia had invited us, summoned us to her house for Thanksgiving dinner. Her invitation had been wrapped in sweetness, but the undertone was command. It wouldn't be the same without the baby. He's the heart of the family now. Everyone's coming to see him. Everyone. And that was the problem. Because Cornelia didn't just want my son. She wanted an audience to watch her play mother again. When we arrived, the scene was already set. Her living room was decorated not for Thanksgiving, but for him. Balloons spelled out his name above the mantel. A framed photo of him, one I hadn't even seen before, sat proudly on the coffee table. The moment we walked in, Cornelia swept him out of my arms and into hers, twirling dramatically, as if cameras were flashing. There's Grandma's boy, she cooed. Then louder for the room, my little angel. The relatives laughed, clapped, leaned in to pinch his cheeks. I stood frozen, stripped bare, as though she had just snatched the air from my lungs. Dinner was worse. Cornelia insisted he sit in the high chair beside her, not me. She spoon-fed him mashed potatoes while narrating the whole act. See how he loves it when Grandma feeds him. He opens his mouth like a baby bird. Every chuckle around the table was a dagger. Daniel tried to meet my eyes across the turkey, his expression apologetic, but he didn't stop her. Not once. And the more, no one challenged her, the bolder Cornelia became. The climax came during dessert. Cornelia stood up, holding him in her arms, and tapped her wineglass with a spoon. Before we cut the pie, she announced proudly, "I'd like to give thanks." The room hushed. "I give thanks for this little one," she continued, kissing his forehead. "He is my second chance, my joy, my reason for living." She paused, eyes glistening as if on cue, then added, "And I promise I will raise him with all the love I gave his father. And more, raise him." The words rang like church bells in my ears. The family clapped politely, oblivious. Some even awed. They didn't see the theft hidden in her declaration. But I did, because she wasn't just thanking. She was claiming him, claiming my role, claiming my son. When we finally left, I gripped the car door so hard my knuckles turned white. Daniel drove in silence, the headlights cutting through the night like blades. Finally, I said it, "She's replacing me." "And you're letting her." Daniel exhaled, his voice heavy. "She's just happy. You know she loves him." "Loves him?" I spat. "Daniel." She introduced herself as if she's his mother. He didn't reply, and in that silence, I knew one thing: Cornelia wasn't going to stop. Not until the world saw him as hers. Every parent waits for the firsts. The first laugh, the first step, the first word. They are sacred markers, proof that all the sleepless nights and endless bottles have meaning. But in my story, those firsts didn't feel sacred. They felt stolen. It started small. Our son was just past his first birthday when Cornelia called one morning, her voice vibrating with excitement. "He said it," she announced breathlessly. I pressed the phone harder to my ear. "Said what?" "Mama," she whispered, as if it were holy. He looked right at me, pointed, and said it clear as day. "Mama." My chest tightened. "No," I said, too quickly. "He says mama all the time." To me. Cornelia chuckled softly, savoring the correction. "Oh, darling, I know he says it to you. But today he said it to me. And I'll never forget it." I hung up and cried in the bathroom, muffling my sobs in a towel. How do you explain to someone that a single word can feel like theft? That it can split you open, leave you hollow? Daniel tried. He sat on the edge of the tub, his hand on my back. She probably misunderstood, he murmured. He's just babbling. He doesn't know what words mean yet. But I knew better. Words matter. And Cornelia wasn't misunderstanding. She was curating, building a story. A version of reality where Mama meant her too. The next milestone was worse. We were at the park, Daniel pushing our son in the swing, when Cornelia arrived like a queen entering her court. She brought juice boxes, snacks, even a tiny sweater just in case. She kneeled in the grass, clapped her hands, and called, "Come to Mama Cornelia." And he did. He let go of the swing, tottered forward, and stumbled into her arms. His first steps. I remember the sound. My own gasp, sharp and strangled, swallowed by her triumphant laughter. "Did you see?" She cried, spinning with him in her arms. He walked to me. His first steps, and they were to me. Daniel clapped automatically, like the proud dad he was. Relatives cheered. Strangers smiled. And I stood there, motionless. A statue carved from grief, because while the world celebrated, I felt something inside me collapse. Later that night, I tried to tell Daniel, "She's taking them from me," I whispered in the dark. "The moments, the memories, they're not hers, but she's making them hers." Daniel turned toward me, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "She's just excited. Can't you let her have this? It doesn't erase you." But it did erase me. Not from my son's life, but from the story Cornelia was writing. The story she would tell at family dinners, in holiday cards, at reunions. He said Mama to me first. He walked to me first. Her version would last. Mine would fade. I began to feel like a ghost in my own motherhood. Watching, always watching, as Cornelia stepped into the spotlight, and the cruelest part, no one else saw the theft. To them, she was just a proud grandmother, basking in the glow of her grandson's love. But I knew she wasn't just proud. She was replacing. By the time our son was 2, Cornelia's tactics had shifted. She no longer bothered with subtle digs or passive-aggressive gestures. Instead, she began making decisions as if she were a third parent in our home. It started with little things, a new brand of diapers she insisted was better for his skin, toys she declared more educational, snacks she claimed he loved at her house. Daniel, tired from work, rarely questioned it. He would shrug and say, "If it makes her happy, why not?" But to me, every substitution was another erasure. My choices were being overridden. My voice as a mother drowned out by hers. The worst came during discipline. One afternoon, when our son threw his toy truck across the living room, I knelt down and gently told him, "No, sweetheart, we don't throw toys. That can hurt someone." My tone was firm but soft, the way I'd read in parenting books. Cornelia, who was visiting just to help out, scoffed openly. She picked him up, kissed his cheek, and said loudly, "Oh, Grandma doesn't mind. He's just expressing himself. Boys will be boys." My son giggled in her arms, clinging to her like she was the safe harbor and I was the storm. In that moment, I wasn't just undermined, I was erased in front of my own child. The authority of mother slipped further and further away each time she corrected me, laughed at my rules, or turned disobedience into a performance of cuteness. Then came the night of the bedtime battle. It was late, and I was trying to keep the routine steady: bath, pajamas, story, bed. Cornelia had stayed over after dinner, claiming she wanted more time with him. As I carried him upstairs, she followed, uninvited, insisting, "He wants Grandma to put him down tonight." I said no, gently but firmly. She ignored me, reaching for him, her smile taut, her eyes sharp. "Come here, darling," she coaxed. "Let Mama Cornelia tuck you in." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. Mama Cornelia. My son reached for her, torn between us, his little hands stretched in confusion. I froze. If I pulled him back, I would be the villain, the cold mother ripping him away from his doting grandmother. If I let him go, I would watch him call another woman Mama as she rocked him to sleep. Daniel arrived in the hallway, his voice weary, his shoulders sagging. "It's late," he said quietly. "Just let her. He'll fall asleep faster." My throat tightened, the rage hot in my chest, but the fight drained out of me in that moment. Cornelia smiled, triumphant, as she carried him into the bedroom, humming a lullaby. I stood in the hall, shaking, tears burning my eyes, while my own husband surrendered me to his mother's arms. From then on, Cornelia escalated. She referred to herself as Mama Cornelia in front of relatives, at church, even in the grocery store when strangers admired the baby. People would laugh, thinking it was quirky, endearing. But to me, it was branding, like she was carving her name into him before he was old enough to resist. And Daniel? He still dismissed my pain. He would pat my hand and say, "You're overthinking. She's just excited. You're still his real mom." But being his real mom wasn't enough if every memory, every story, every word of Mama was tied to her performance. The breaking point came on his second birthday. Cornelia had planned the entire party, balloons, decorations, even the cake. I had wanted something simple, a small gathering, but she insisted on inviting 20 relatives and half her neighborhood. When it was time to sing, she lifted him up on her hip, louder than anyone else, leading the chorus like a queen presenting her heir. When the candles were blown out, she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Mama's so proud of you." He clapped, smiling, not even noticing which Mama had said it. That night, as I scrubbed frosting off plates and folded paper hats into the trash, I felt hollow. Not angry, not even jealous, just empty. My title, my role, my place as his one and only mother had been diluted, shared, chipped away until it felt like I was just a guest in my own child's life. And Cornelia? She was winning. Piece by piece, smile by smile, memory by memory, she was rewriting the story of who raised him, of who he belonged to. And I realized, with a cold clarity, that she wasn't going to stop. Not unless I found a way to fight back. The breaking point came in the most ordinary way. A phone call. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray day where the sky looks heavy and the air feels like it's holding its breath. I was folding laundry when Daniel answered the ringing phone. His voice softened, and I knew instantly it was her. "Cornelia." I half listened, half focused on pairing socks, until I heard him say, "Okay, we'll talk about it." When he hung up, I asked casually, "What does she want now?" He hesitated, and that hesitation was the answer. Finally, he said, "She thinks maybe he should spend a night at her house, just once, to see how it goes." My hands froze on a tiny blue sock. A night? Not just an afternoon visit, not just babysitting. A whole night, in her house, without me. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Over my dead body. Daniel rubbed his face, weary. "She just wants to help. You're exhausted all the time. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad." But I knew better. This wasn't about help. This was the next step in her campaign. If he spent one night there, it would become 2, then weekends, then summers. And every minute away from me was another minute for her to rewrite the story of who his mother really was. "No," I said, my voice steady. "He's not sleeping there. Not now, not ever." The confrontation didn't wait. That Sunday, Cornelia showed up unannounced. She swept through the front door with her perfect hair and her perfect smile, carrying a bag stuffed with pajamas, books, even his favorite stuffed bear. She didn't ask. She expected. "Grandma's boy is coming home with me tonight," she sang, arms outstretched. I stepped between them, my chest pounding. "He's not going anywhere." The room went still. Daniel looked up from the couch, caught between us. Cornelia's smile faltered, just for a second, before she steadied it again. "Darling, don't be dramatic," she said, her tone condescending. "He wants to come with me. He cries when he leaves my house. You know he does. This is what's best for him." Her words hit me like knives. Best for him. As if I were the obstacle, the villain. I shook my head. "I'm his mother. He sleeps here, with me." Cornelia's eyes narrowed. "And I'm Mama Cornelia. He needs me just as much as he needs you." That was it. The sentence that shattered the last piece of restraint I had. "No," I said, my voice breaking, my body trembling. "He doesn't need two mothers. He needs me. Just me." The fight that followed was raw, vicious, years of swallowed pain finally spilling out. I told her about the chocolates, the milestones, the bedtime battles, the birthday humiliation. I told her how she had chipped away at me piece by piece, how she had stolen the word mama until it felt like it no longer belonged to me. Cornelia fired back, claiming she had only ever loved him, that I was selfish, that I was threatened by a grandmother's devotion. Her words dripped with honey and venom all at once, and Daniel, my husband, sat silent, caught between the woman who gave him life and the woman he had built a life with. His silence was another betrayal, another crack in the foundation that had once held us. Finally, I said it, the words I had never dared speak aloud. If you don't set boundaries, Daniel, if you don't tell her no, then I will. And I don't care what it costs us. The room hung heavy with silence. That night, Cornelia left without him. Her heels clicked angrily against the tile, her perfume lingering long after the door slammed shut. I stood in the quiet, holding my son, feeling his tiny heartbeat against my chest. He was mine, still mine, for now, but the cost was clear. Daniel avoided me for days, retreating into work, into silence. When we spoke, it was clipped, careful, as though words themselves might detonate another explosion. Cornelia, of course, didn't give up. She sent texts, photos, passive-aggressive invitations. She called herself Mama Cornelia, louder than ever, determined to prove that nothing had changed. But something had changed. Me. For the first time in years, I had said no. For the first time, I had drawn a line in the sand. And though the war wasn't over, I knew one thing. She wasn't going to take everything. Not without a fight. In the end, this isn't a story with a perfect resolution. It isn't a fairy tale where the villain disappears or the hero wins completely. Cornelia is still here, still smiling, still performing. And Daniel, he's still torn, still silent more often than not. But I am different now, stronger, sharper, louder. Because when someone tries to take the most sacred word in your life, the word that defines who you are, Mama, you learn to fight with everything you have. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.